Hey, good morning. We are ready for questions in the chat area. If you could make your inquiry or your question when you send it to all panelists. Okay, hi Francisco. I worked for my dad's non-licensed landscaping company from 20 to 22, just has local licenses and permits. I'm assuming that's with the city. I started my own landscaping company in 22 with the same local license fees and permits. How do I prove my work experience for with both? And would it be just about 5 years experience total? It would be. Is that enough to qualify? Is the application fee refundable? So right off the bat, application fee is non-refundable. It is stated on the application itself. Once you drop that in the post office box, it is an earned fee because it goes through quite a few different units before it actually reaches the processing technician. So yeah, application fee is non-refundable. So all applicants are required to show 48 months, which is 4 years of journey level practical work experience in the classification that they're applying for within the last 10 years. So if you have 5, that should meet the requirement of the 48 months. Again, has to be journey level, non-supervision of yourself performing the trades of the classification that you'll be applying for. And although we don't, it's great that you have a local license and permitting or whatever they require. We don't look into that. So your work experience is going to be what is listed on your certificate of work experience that's located within your application, signed by your certifier. And let me pull up both of them then, since we have some people asking questions in the Q&As instead of the chat. Bogdan, I have been self-employed for 7 years in the trades. How do I approach getting a certifier for the work experience portion of the application? Well, self-employed in what trade? Because you would be applying, if you've never applied for a classification with CSLB, you can only apply for one. And again, as I just explained, you do have to have the 48 months, which is equivalent to 4 years, journey level practical work experience. Your certifier is someone who has firsthand knowledge of your experience. And if you look at the certification of work experience form, you're going to see there's about, I believe, 7 or 8 different individual titles of that could possibly be your certifier. It could be an employer, doesn't have to be an employer. It could be a contractor, but it does not have to be a contractor. There's business associate, there's union, there's fellow employee. There's a whole plethora of different individuals who could be your certifier. So whomever you choose to be your certifier, again, they have to have firsthand knowledge of your experience, is who you'd want to ask to certify your work experience. So on that certification of work experience form, you're filling out part 1, where the certifier is filling out part 2. Devin, hi, for owner builder experience, how do you prove 4 years experience? Is there a minimum number of projects? So it's a little different with owner builder, and owner builder is only valid for the B general building classification. So you, Devin, could submit 4 years of experience doing whatever that you did on these projects. although the experience is not necessarily going to equal that, because what happens when the owner builder experience comes in, we're looking at your permits, we're looking at your finalized inspection reports, and then we're doing a calculation on how long it took to do the square footage of the project that you did. So not necessarily would the 4 years that you list on those project lists get you exactly 4 years. You might have to have a little bit more time, because it should be obvious that if you did a project for 4 years and it was just a bathroom, it doesn't take 4 years to do a bathroom. So we're going to do some calculations to see what it would take a contractor to do that, or an individual who has the know-how to do that, and time would be calculated from there, and you would definitely need some more time on something like that. So it is based on the square footage of the project and what was being done, what's stated on the permits, and then your finalized project reports, inspection reports from the city. So that was Devin. MJ, if I will be working with someone who is applying for their C33, should I be listed as an RME? Am I able to write to certify the work experience? Okay, when you say you're working with someone, are you an employee, or are you actually going to apply as the qualifier? Because an RME is the qualifier. The RME or RMO would be the one who's going to have that journey level experience for the 48 months, and they're the ones who are going to have to test. So if you could clarify your question, MJ, of whether or not you're going to be the qualifier, or if you're just on a license with somebody who already holds the C33. And I'm not certain about, am I able to write to certify the work experience? We need to know the whole picture. If you could give us a little bit clarification on your question. Michelle, I work as a muralist and I'm applying to get my C33 for my company. I often hire people on a project base, but they are not consistent employees. Would I need to add anyone who I hire under my application? No, you do not. However, you will have to have workers' compensation. Anybody who is out on a project working with you has to be covered under your license with your workers' comp. So even if you only do it for a job, or if you only do it for 2 days of the job, if you have employees with you on site, you have to have workers' compensation. They do not have to be listed on the license, as they are just an employee and not an officer. If you're applying for a corporation, if you're a sole ownership, it's just you. However, you can hire employees, but yeah, they don't have to be listed on the license, but you would have to have workers' compensation. Can I acquire my C29 masonry license before I create my company? This is Taylin. You can, but you still have to have like a business name. So when applicants ask about, hey, can I do this first before I create a company? You'd have to apply for some sort of entity. And to us, or to me, when you're applying for the entity, this is your company. So if you were just going to be Taylin's Masonry as a sole owner, that's your company name, that's your business name. If you're talking about in the future, you're going to maybe apply for a corporation or an LLC, your entity would have to be submitted on your application. If you change it down the road, depending upon when you did it, you can't make changes to the application after we deem it acceptable, after we post it. So if you were to make that change after that, you'd have to start a brand new application, which means you would withdraw this one unless you were going to follow through with the sole ownership and pay the fees, because again, application fee is non-refundable. So no changes can be made after we deem your application acceptable, which is posted. So in my opinion, or my best advice would be to have your entity set up of what you wanted it to be at the time that you're applying, so there's no loss of application fees or time. Okay, MJ, it looks like, hold on. You sent the same question. So we need to have that clarified a little better. You're welcome, Taylin.
Okay, so let's jump back to the chat. I see that we already answered Enrique's question, so we're gonna skip that one. Z and J Extraordinary HVAC ask, so would we need just a written statement from our previous employer for the 4 years experience? No, again, as Dana mentioned, you will need to fill out the work certification form. You pretty much complete it, and this your certifier will have to certify and sign off of your work experience that you indicated on that form. So we're not asking for a written statement. We're asking for you to pretty much put down all of your experience on the work certification form, which is on the application packet, and your certifier will review that and certify your experience based off of that.
Okay, so that was Z and J. So back to Enrique. No, you already answered my question. Sorry. Erica, I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in business. Can the credit for these be added together to total 36 months worth of credit? So unfortunately, Erica, no. And disclaimer for everyone, CSLB cannot pre-qualify any of your possible education credit. So that is determined once we receive your application with your officially sealed transcript from whatever school that you went to that has your degree listed. Those things are reviewed together, and then a determination is made from there. Is it related at all to the classification that you're applying for? Is it not? You know, is this just transcripts that has some classes completed and not a degree? It's something that we cannot predict, and we cannot, again, pre-qualify. However, you cannot add 2 degrees together. It's 1 degree. You can send them all in, and we will choose which one could give you the possible most education credit, but you cannot add them together. That's not how we determine this. So again, just to put it out there in case anybody else asks the questions, we cannot predetermine or pre-qualify any of your degrees and what you might get for the classification that you're applying for, and you only get credit for 1 degree. You are welcome to send in all your degrees if you have multiple, and CSLB will pick the one that gives you the most education credit to apply towards your work experience. Stephen, so I think I heard that all contractors need workers' comp coverage, even sole proprietors working alone with no employees or subs. That was in the works. However, it has been postponed till 2028. So right now, there are a handful of classifications that require workers' comp regardless of if you're a sole proprietor or if you have employees, you have to have workers' comp. Otherwise, if you don't have employees, you don't have to cover, or you don't have to have that coverage. But this has been in place for almost 2 years now, I believe. So your C8 concrete, your C20 HVAC, your C22 asbestos abatement, your, excuse me, 22, jump in here. If you still have a D49 and have not converted it over to a C49, that is automatic, and that needs to have workers' comp as well as your C39 roofing. But there are those handful of classifications that regardless, employees or no employees, you have to carry workers' comp. But everybody does not have to carry it as of right now. That has been postponed until 2028. Let's see here. So MJ, you state that I will be working as an employee. So you're not the qualifier, is that correct? So you would not be the RME. Again, the RME or RMO is a qualifier. That's the person who has the experience, and that's the person who's going to test. If you're just working with somebody who is going to be the qualifier, then I think what you said was, can you, in a nutshell, be the certifier for that person? I mean, you could if you have that firsthand knowledge of their experience. But again, you're just stating that you're working as an employee, so I'm still not certain if you're going to be the qualifier or if you're not going to be the qualifier. MJ, why don't you shoot us an email at licensing@cslb.ca.gov and give us a lot more details, and we can try to sort this out for you so that we can give you a better answer. Jordan, can you provide the link to the list of titles that qualify for the person signing for the work experience? Or is this on the application? It is located on the certification of work experience form, which is within your application. Again, about 7 or 8 different people who can do this. Let me see if I can find it. There's 7 of them. Okay, so it sounds like there's 7. And we have employer, a fellow journeyman, a contractor, a fellow employee, a union representative, a foreman or supervisor, or a business associate. So again, 7 different titles that your certifier could possibly be. And pretty much anybody could fall under that, if you worked with side by side with them, if you did work for them, if you could be a business associate. So yes, all those titles are listed on the certification of work experience form. Esmeralda, can you give me details regarding the waiver qualifications? Well, Esmeralda, are you already licensed with CSLB? Generally, it's going to be somebody who, there are a couple different waiver options. However, most popular, most used is that you already hold the classification because you've already tested and been licensed with CSLB, and that would be the waiver that most people utilize. If they've already been a sole ownership and now they're going to apply for a corporation, that's a waiver and exam. So they don't have to show their work experience again, as long as they're applying for the same classification that they previously held, and they don't have to retest. But Esmeralda, if you also want to send us over an email to licensing@cslb.ca.gov and give us a little bit more information about your particular situation. Okay, so MJ, you're currently an employee for someone who is applying for the C33. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Currently, I work with them doing mostly admin work, but occasionally I will help paint. Would it be best to list me on the license? If so, what would be the best title? I'm also wondering if I could fill out the portion of the application to certify their work experience, since I've been on site with them for previous projects. So you could possibly be the certifier. Again, if you firsthand witness the 48 months journey level practical work experience, that should not be an issue. Dependent upon what classification they're applying for would determine whether or not you can be listed on the license. So if they're applying for a sole ownership, you would be an employee. You cannot be listed on a sole ownership, just the sole owner would be. But that person would have to have workers' compensation in order for you to be out there helping paint. The same thing with you being admin and doing their admin work, you're considered an employee, so you wouldn't be listed on a license if it was a sole ownership. If it was a different entity, it's a possibility. But again, it's based upon the entity. But again, doing admin work or out there painting, you are an employee, so they would have to hold workers' compensation. Francisco, is it true that the new minimum is $1,000 for a job? But that is correct, Francisco. That just happened the first of the year. It is a maximum of $1,000, which includes labor and materials, is what the new unlicensed contractor can perform.
Dana, I also want to add to the $1,000. It's also you cannot have any employees, and the project and the work cannot be something that requires a permit. Because if it is, then you have to have a license for those. Sorry, Dana. Thanks.
Nope, that's absolutely correct. You know, you can't under $1,000. It's generally going to be like minor work. Once you get into the permits with the city, it's going to be major work. It's going to be more than $1,000. You're going to have to be licensed. And Tao is absolutely right. If you have employees, can't have employees when you're unlicensed. Yeah, the $1,000 is for labor and materials for you to perform this job. Masood, who can certify your work experience? We've already answered this. There are 7 different titles that are listed on the certification of work experience form. If you take a gander at that, they do have to, in order to certify you, have firsthand knowledge of that 48 months of journey level practical work experience. Z and J, what will the exams look like? If you could give some examples and how many questions are in each test. So there are sample exams on our website. Unfortunately, we can't give you any examples or what the exams look like, although the exams are multiple choice when you go into a PSI location. And I'm also not certain, because we're not privy to a lot of the testing information, how many questions are on each test. But if you go to our website, www.cslb.ca.gov, go to the applicant link that should be located at the top of the page, and you're going to see quite a few different subjects in there, but it does talk about testing. It does talk about study guides, and there you will find, depending upon the classification that you're applying for, you will see some sample tests and like where some reference material of where the questions are derived from. Stephen, you're welcome. Alfredo, how much for the application? For the application itself, it's $450. On top of that, when your application is posted, which means we've deemed it acceptable, then you go to test. There could be additional fees. Like if you have to retest, I do believe as of the beginning of the year, you now have to pay for your exam. Ron, is that correct? Let me double check on that. But I know if you don't pass your exams, then you have to pay a retest fee. And then after you pass your exams, then you would have to send in your ILF, which is your initial licensing fee, which depending upon your the entity that you're applying for is how much that's going to be. So if you're a sole owner, it's going to be $200. Any other entity is going to be $350. So fees can add up if maybe the first time around, you didn't study for the test, so you had to retest again. So there are things that can pop up. You do not pay your contractor's bond or your workers' comp to CSLB. That's something that you do out on your own when that time approaches. So that money is completely separate away from your application. But application itself is $450 for one classification. MJ, you will not be the qualifier. Can you please repeat the email? It is licensing@cslb.ca.gov. Jordan, can there be multiple people signing for the verification of work? I'm assuming your verification of work experience. So you can have separate certification of work experience forms that have different people certifying that experience. So let's say you worked at company ABC for 2.5 years, and then you worked for company DEF for the remaining 1.5 years, or maybe 2 more years. You can, if your certifier witnessed all of your experience, they could fill out both forms. If not, you can have, whomever witnessed your experience at the first company be your certifier for the first one, and whoever witnessed your experience for the second company sign off on that one. So yeah, you can have different people. They would have to be on different certification of work experience forms. They cannot be on the same one. Yeah. So we're trying to find out the PSI question.
Okay, so the application fee, like Dana mentioned, is the $450. That does not cover the PSI exams. So candidates will now pay PSI exams directly to schedule and reschedule their exams. This eliminates CSLB rules in handling these fees. It's $45.65 per exam, or $91.30 for 2 exams. And again, if you do have any questions about that, it is handled through PSI, so you would have to contact them for that. But the $450 of the application fee does not cover the PSI examination. That's a separate fee.
Okay, thank you, Tao. Nathaniel, how quick from the submission of the application, passing exam, and meeting all requirements to becoming licensed contractor? I generally give a timeline of 4 to 8 weeks. Does it mean it's going to take 8 weeks? Absolutely not. However, depending on our workload, how many applications are coming in, how many processing technicians have how many different applications to work on, it's dependent upon that, on the workload and who's processing. So I give a canned statement of 4 to 8 weeks, and you can probably bet on it will be between that time. We did put the licensing email in the chat, so you can see that. Vanessa, can 2 qualified individuals take the exam? Could I take the California law exam and my spouse take the trade exam? Unfortunately, no. Whoever's going to be the qualifier takes both exams. There's no splitting that up. Michelle, for the RMO, RME, or responsible managing member or responsible managing manager, can we get clarification? I'm the owner of a company applying for a C33 and I'm confused on which one I would fall under. Well, Michelle, what is the entity that you're applying for? That's what this is going to be based off mostly. If you can let us know that, we can give you a little bit more specific information. So I would recommend, Michelle, maybe shooting us over an email at the licensing email that we have posted in the chat. Natsuki Grace, are you talking about the $1,000 rule? That would be located in the California Contractors License Law and Reference Book. And this is located under 7027.2. So it is there in the law, or you can go to our website, type in information, and that information will pop up. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. We've, as of the 1st of January, nothing over $1,000. That includes labor and materials. You cannot have employees. You can't do any permittable work because that's generally not what a handyman is going to do. Esmeralda, at what point during the process will the background check, fingerprinting take place, after testing or before? So once we deem your application acceptable, then your live scan information is sent out to you. So It can be during testing, it could be just right before, or you can do it after. That's completely up to you. But once we deem your application acceptable and you're passed on to testing, you will receive that in the mail. Michelle, when you say entity, can you clarify what you mean? I'm an LLC currently applying. Okay, so an LLC is your entity. So if you're going to be the qualifier for your LLC for the C33 painting and decorating classification, you, well, again, okay, hold on. Based upon what your title is with the California Secretary of State, because your LLC should be registered, you should have a statement of information filed. If you're a manager or a member and you're going to be the qualifier, then you would either be, if you're the manager, you're going to be the responsible managing manager. If you are a member listed on the SOI at the California Secretary of State's office for the LLC, then you're going to be the responsible managing member. It's based upon what your title is since you're with an LLC. And again, that does have to be registered. We don't count it as owners, Michelle. You are a manager or a member of the LLC. Is it registered with the California Secretary of State's office? If you want, you can send us an email to the licensing email that we've mentioned throughout the chat to give you a little bit more information. Because we could also, at that point, outside of the chat, look up the business name, or if you have the registration number, and we can tell you what you've listed and what you're going to be listed as on that application. Junior, I'm the only owner employee for a general construction company corporation. What do I fall under for the CSLB application, RMO or RME? If you're the sole person listed on this company and you're a corporation, again, based upon what your title is with the California Secretary of State's office, most likely you're going to be an RMO, which is a responsible managing officer. So an RME is a responsible managing employee. As an RME, you can't be listed on the application, which would turn into a license by yourself. So more than likely, you're going to be an RMO. And again, this is based upon what you stated your title was when you registered your corporation with the California SOS office. So let's go to Erica. If the person who is the qualifier is not the owner of the business, say in a corporation, and they quit, how long does the owner have to hire someone else who can be a new qualifier? That is a great question, Erica. It is 90 days from the date of disassociation. So if they were to, let's say you're doing business right now, you have a corporation, and they state that they ceased to work for you on the 24th of September. Your 90 days is up. If they've sent in that disassociation and CSLB has processed it, and they're stating this is the date that they disassociated or that they no longer worked for you, that 90 days ended, at the end of December. So you would be suspended for no qualifier. So if you're doing, it gets kind of tricky, unfortunately. Some people will put a date that was back in the past, knowing that the corporation, LLC, whatever the entity is, only has 90 days to replace that. This is law. We do give them 90 days. However, if they state or if they actually did not work past a certain date, they can put that date on there. So you got to be careful. Personal, you'd have to be careful who you're doing business with. Make sure if you're listing them on your SOI because it's a corporation or an LLC, statement of information, you're going to want to know that as somebody, as an officer or as a manager or as a member, they can disassociate themselves, they can disassociate you. So sorry, I got off on a little bit of a tangent, but We see this a lot. So you have 90 days. Generally, you're going to have 90 days from the date of disassociation, but just be aware that if that disassociation date was further in the past, that 90 days goes from that date, and you could be suspended. So just keep an eye on it.
Yes, I do want to add on to Dana saying that is the law is you have 90 days from the date of disassociation date, but we as CSLB, we do honor what disassociation date they put on there. So if they say they left back at the beginning of the year, they left last year, we are going to honor that date. So if that date passes the 90 days, then the license will automatically suspend.
Yeah, it becomes an unfortunate situation. So yes, just be aware. It would behoove everyone, if you're going to apply for a contractor's license, to go to our website and get the free download for the California Contractor's License Law and Reference Book. These are the laws that you do have to adhere to as a contractor out there in California. It's a nice little book, but I would definitely recommend that you guys take a gander at it, because it is something that you're going to need to know as a contractor, and that CSLB will hold you accountable for, because going into this, this is information that you need to know. So if you have time, it's a free download. You can upload it, download it to your computer, and have that and review it, go through it and see what's listed there. Francisco, going off my original question, you said they have to witness your work firsthand. Does that mean that my self-employment work wouldn't count towards the experience? Well, Francisco, did anybody happen to see you when you were doing your work? Was anybody else around? Did you have another employee, a fellow employee? Was the homeowner there, dependent upon what you were doing? Somebody would have had to have witnessed it, because you do have to have a certifier with your work experience. Alfredo, question, we need a corporation for licensed General B. No, your entity is absolutely up to you of what you want to apply for. You can be a sole ownership with a General B if that's what you have the experience in. You do not have to be a corporation or any other entity to hold any particular classification. Your entity and your classification is completely up to you. Looks like Mike just kind of jumping back and forth to question and answers. If you have a question, everybody, please send it to chat. So we have it in one place. Please make it available to all panelists. But bouncing back to questions and answers, just looking. Bogdan, you state that your father passed away. He would have been your certifier. I don't know if that means that you worked for somebody or you worked for him and he was the contractor, if he was an employee who worked side by side with you. I mean, if there's somebody else, because obviously if your father passed away, and please accept our condolences for your loss, somebody would have to have witnessed this, your experience. Depending on what his title at that time would have been, I see you put would business associate be best. Well, if unfortunately, if he's not here, you can't put that he was your business associate. You would have to find somebody else who had the knowledge of your experience, so that your application is valid and your experience is valid. Mike, does the C23 license require 4 years of experience? Does all construction experience apply to all licenses? What type of bond would I need for an LLC and with one employee doing work with the C23 license? So, excuse me, all classifications require a minimum of 48 months, which is 4 years of journey level practical work experience, all classifications. the experience should be directly related to the classification that you're applying for. For an LLC, you are required to hold 2 different bonds, which would be the contractor's bond, which is required of every entity. And then as an LLC, you would have to have an LLC employee worker bond, which is a requirement for LLCs only. In addition, you would have workers' comp if you have employees, 1 employee, 2 employees, it doesn't matter. You would have to have workers' compensation. And then you do have to have general liability as an LLC also. General liability is not required for any other entity other than the LLC. So those are your 2 bonds that is required of LLC with your workers' comp and your general liability. Just as a reminder, if you don't want to ask your question here, if you need more specific information, excuse me, you can always email us at licensing@cslb.ca.gov. The email is always manned Monday through Friday. And I think if we give it a couple more seconds to see if anybody has any other questions. Yeah.
Alrighty, so that's all the time we have today for our workshop. Thank you for all of your questions. If you have any other questions about your application, we encourage you to drop an email to our licensing division. Again, that email is licensing@cslb.ca.gov. If at some point you need to reschedule your exam, you can get that process started by dropping an email to exams@cslb.ca.gov. I'm sorry. We also put together a list of available resources for women considering a career in construction. If you haven't already, be sure to download this presentation to get them. You can download the presentation on the banner at the top of our homepage. If you're watching the archive video of this workshop on our YouTube page, you'll find a link to the presentation below. Take it away, Dana.
Okay, so we welcome your comments and topics for future webcasts. Just drop us an email at social@cslb.ca.gov. We want to give a special thanks to our licensing division and public affairs office for their help on this workshop. The Get Licensed to Build workshop is a copyrighted production of the California Contractors State License Board, and we thank you for watching.